Angela. And Angela is actually speaking about a use case, a very specific use case of project that is called KlimaDAO, that is actually already bringing, like, connecting these kinds of thoughts and putting them into a venture. Let me just introduce Angela real quickly. So our next speaker is an alumna from DHBW, ESB Business School, and DLT Talents, so also another DLT Talents graduate from our mentoring program for women. And she's also a chartered accountant and chartered blockchain expert. So Angela did actually quite a lot of work to become an expert, and also a lot of work to bring to you the fundamental understanding of how to look at, a bit more of a progressive project. This maybe will help you understand how to think blockchain, and also how far the blockchain world actually already is beyond all this NFT hype and Bitcoin hype and so on that you read in the press every day. So thank you very much, Angie, for being with us today, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Yves. Thanks for the introduction. And I'm really glad to talk with you about KlimaDAO today. And the aim of KlimaDAO in the end is quite a simple one: to drive up the cost of carbon assets. And in the end, what would happen if carbon assets are more expensive? It's more expensive to produce dirty. So quite a simple concept. I really like that one. And it was some weeks ago that I first read about KlimaDAO. And with you, I want to dive into the mechanics of the protocol now, and wrap up with how can you engage yourself if you get interested in KlimaDAO and their protocol. For this, I would take the lead with my Bildschirm. Hang on. The host hat wird deaktiviert.
Does it work? Let me make you a call.
Can I share my screen, Yip?
Sure, yes.
Excellent. Thank you. So for this, I will guide you through a diagram that Florian Strauff has done. And hang on, can you?
Not yet, but you should be able to share.
Yep, would you let me know if it appears?
I'm appearing on the screen. now this is perfect.
Excellent. So technique. So this is, as I said, from Florian, and I would like to guide you through the key terms, the participants, and the DeFi mechanism, especially when it comes to this part here, the Treasury. So let's start with KlimaDAO. KlimaDAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. And what they have done, they've set up a currency backed by something. In former times, our currency was also backed by something. It used to be gold. So KlimaDAO does more or less an old principle. They want to issue a currency, and that is the Klima token. And this Klima token is backed by something that is called BCT, base carbon ton. So this is a real world asset. It's carbon offsets that are backed and locked in the Treasury. And the protocol rule is that one Klima can only be minted when there's at least one base carbon ton locked up in the Treasury. So actually quite old principle, and it got me intrigued a little bit. So we have Klima with KlimaDAO token and the base carbon tons, which is what will be locked in the Treasury. They have a second part that they take in as potential asset, and these are liquidity pool tokens.
Let me jump in.
They have two different liquidity pool tokens. One is the BCT USDC liquidity pool token, and the other one is Klima BCT liquidity pool token. This liquidity pool token is primarily used for the KlimaDAO to have their own liquidity. And this is the protocol-owned liquidity Klima will take in and will log in as part of their treasury. So who are the, before I come to reward mechanism, who are the participants? It's, I make my way down actually. It's one participant is a potential staker. A staker would buy Klima, as example, from the market. Here they for example, we have the decentralized sushi swap exchange. A staker can buy Klima tokens there and stake it with the protocol with KlimaDAO. Why should they do that? Because they receive rewards for it. And in the case of KlimaDAO, they used to be really high. They've come down now, but this is an incentive mechanism. If a staker buys Klima and logs it into KlimaDAO with staking, they receive rewards every 8 hours. The rebasing takes place every 8 hours. So in the end, 3 times a day, a staker receives new Klima token in his wallet. A second participant is the bonder. The bonder would provide either BCT tokens or liquidity pool tokens. Both can be bought from the market as well. They've here the sushi swap, for example, where they could acquire the pool tokens, and with the bonder, they would give KlimaDAO their assets, and the incentive for doing this is that the bonder would receive, after a vesting period of 5 days, the KlimaDAO token at a discount. So they provide assets to the treasury, lock it in, and after 5 days, KlimaDAO would mint them 1 Klima. So how does now I want to talk with you how all these BCT tokens and assets would come in. So they use currently they use the Toucan bridge for that. So the Toucan bridge is in the end the connector between real world and the blockchain. The Toucan bridge has a base carbon tool. And from this base carbon tool, the BCT token is minted. In the end, what happens with the Toucan pool? We have a real world that is our world. We have projects here that that give potential carbon offsets because they, for example, remove carbon out of the atmosphere, or make or support a technology to produce something with less carbon emission. So these are projects that are in the real world. With the NFT technology, these project would come onto the blockchain. And this is a technical part. The NFT would be fractionalized and slided down to TCO2 tokens. These TCO2 tokens capture far more parameters than the BCT in the end would do, to know where is the registry, what registry does the project come from, what country of origin, is it or deforestation. So there are really different attributes to it. With the base carbon tool, these parameters are necessary to determine base carbon pools, but for the KlimaDAO, it's necessary to have a comparable unit of account. So in the end, TCO2 tokens within the token bridge are converted to a BCT token. And this BCT token can be seen as an index like the DAX and with a lot of underlying TCO2 tokens, but the index ensures the same measuring. So in the end, the protocol can use it to mint one Klima when one BCT is given to the Treasury. And here the last player is currently Vera. So KlimaDAO is currently using projects that are registered with Vera, which is um, a standard in the end to judge on projects, because not every project would be eligible under Vera. So it's a standardized. They have certain standards, and when these are met, they will be recorded in the registry of Vera. So this is how it all comes together. The project verified by Vera in the end via the token bridge, and SushiSwap comes into KlimaDAO. So in the end, we have here a currency that ton, which is what the founder or developers of KlimaDAO also say. It comes with an intrinsic value, because even though the demand and supply of Klima tokens fluctuate as per market, there's always this paradigm that one Klima is always backed by one BCT in the treasury. And this one BCT treasury, it's like with gold, it has a value. It's already existing. The carbon offsets are already existing in the real world. It's a market that's already in place for years, for decades. And KlimaDAO uses the voluntary market of carbon offsets currently. There might be changes, but currently it's a voluntary market, and carbon offsets have a price. So that is the interesting part for me in KlimaDAO, that we have a currency that is backed by something that has a price in the real world, and these are the carbon offsets. And that's how they also aim to make the world more sustainable, because when the price of carbon offsets goes up because there's scarcity in the market and demand is higher than supply, then also the value of KlimaDAO would go up. And as long as the carbon offsets are locked here into the treasury, it's not available in the market anymore. So one part that is still missing, and it might be also an interesting part for the ones who called in, it's this reward mechanism. And I wanted to just briefly talk about the reward mechanisms. The APY was very high when it initially launched, and it's still very high. I mean, I took out the figures. It's this morning, so it's still 22,000%, I think. So it's record high. So how does it work? I've seen many articles that call it Ponzi game, probably. Who knows? In the end, we will see what happens. I will just explain you where does the APY currently come from. So we have, it always comes back to this basic rule that one Klima is always backed by at least one BCT. So what happens if the following occurs? We take Klima token valued at $400, for example. Then we have BCT token, and this has also a value, right? And let's set it for, easiness of calculation at $10. And let's assume an investor wants to buy one Klima. They would need to pay 400. And in the case of bonding, they would receive a discount on the Klima price. And in my example, let's put it for 10%. So in the end, he would need to pay $360 to receive one Klima token worth 400. he would supply BCT. And in my example, one BCT costs $10. So in the end, to provide $360 worth of assets, he would need to provide 36 BCT. And now this is where the magic happens. I really like that part. So the bonder, the potential investor, would provide 36 BCT to the KlimaDAO protocol. The KlimaDAO protocol, however, after a vesting period of 5 days, only mints one token. So one token to the bonder, but they got in 36 BCT. So they have 36 Klima token, but only one gets paid out to the bonder. So what happens with the 35 that were minted because 36 BCT was given to the Treasury? Well, it goes a small fraction. I think it's 10% currently. A small fraction goes to KlimaDAO for fees, maintenance costs, etc. And the rest, this is the reward mechanism, go to the staker. So this is where the high APIs currently come from. Why do they do that? Because they wanted to supply liquidity. They want to become a currency that is used. And in order to be a currency that is used, there needs to be a big supply. It's not sufficient to have only some thousands, some millions tokens there. If you want to use it as a currency, reserve currency, there needs to be a high supply. How do you do that? Well, with fiat currency, they print. With KlimaDAO, the topic is they cannot print if they don't have assets going into the treasury. So they make it more interesting for people to provide assets, these are the bonders, to the treasury in order to be able to give out more Klima tokens to increase the supply of the treasury. And yeah, this got my head wrapped around quite a bit the last weeks. I really like the topic, and I'm sorry, I'm a bit puzzled because I see I talked far too long already. So just as a small wrap up, how can you engage yourself? There's this KlimaDAO site, and they have a Discord channel. So if you log into KlimaDAO and to community, you would go to the, I'm not logged in. I have an account, I'm logged in, and they have twice a week the office hours where they talk about the protocol, where all the members are there. All the potential voting members, of course, can vote. And you can engage yourself if you're interested. They have a lot of different groups. And yeah, so if you're interested, you could always engage yourself. And I would like to open the channel now for questions from the audience.
Yeah, amazing deep dive into KlimaDAO. Everyone, please feel free to ask any kind of questions. This is the way to gather collective understanding about one of the most hyped projects in the market. So there's a question from Christian who's asking, how does KlimaDAO differ from its fork? But maybe before we answer this question, because I know there are some people in the audience who have never heard of the term DAO. Maybe let's start really from a bird's perspective. What is a DAO? And then the genesis history of this KlimaDAO. And then we talk about the forks, and what are forks, so that everyone has a chance to follow our discussion as it becomes a bit technical.
Right, sure. Well, the DAO, it's a decentralized autonomous organization that is it's going to be in a new way how our corporations will work. It's the founding members are unknown. At least I haven't found any records on them. So they engaged online. It's all about the decentralization of with the Web3 happens. It's the same with this kind of corporations. They exist on the blockchain. They have they have members, and as per policy, these members are allowed to vote for protocol changes. And yeah, do you have anything to add maybe to that?
Yeah, DAO is like basically in the blockchain world, something that is not too new, but currently gaining a lot of public attention. And like Angela already said, it's a decentralized autonomous organization. And one would imagine it's a group of people typically who around the globe, groups of friends, sometimes anonymous, sometimes they don't even know each other because they just communicate over the internet and don't use video camera. That could be an extreme. Other DAOs are like groups of people who know each other and so on, and some even have a legal entity. So it's either like very loosely organized, you don't know anyone from there, but you have a common goal. And now we have forms of, it's like a cooperative on the blockchain, a cooperative as in German, a Genossenschaft. Right, but sometimes they don't have a legal entity and sometimes they do. And then they have a common goal, as in, for example, what is the common goal of KlimaDAO? Would you be able to explain that in one word, in one sentence, Angela?
I try. Yeah, the goal is to make climate change happen, to be able to meet the 1.5% targets.
Yes, so the degree, exactly. So people came together and they looked at it economically, and they were like, okay, what's in our view one of the big drivers that will move the needle when we want to like work towards increasing climate temperature by less than 1.5 degrees, so that we do not get into a climate catastrophe, as some people are thinking. And then they came to the conclusion, okay, one of the big drivers is, hey, we need to find ways to disincentivize people to produce CO2. And these things are already there. Like they are already out there, like Angela already explained to us, there's these carbon offsetting. In some countries and jurisdictions, it's like legally imposed. And then there's this voluntary carbon market where also companies nowadays, because of investment companies and funds, like Louisa has presented before, they always care more and more about environmental standards. So they ask the companies to comply to certain offsetting standards, right? If you produce CO2, then you also have to find a way to offset it. And now you have to pay a price for that. So when the price for offsetting this becomes very high, then there's a market incentive to produce projects, for example, forests and soil regeneration projects that will enable you to earn these kinds of carbon credits, so you can sell them to companies that basically produce CO2. And now the way they thought about it is to link it to the blockchain. And Angela has already explained to us how that exactly works, all the nuts and bolts. This was very, very deep. Thank you so much. And all these protocols, and this is done like, not in a manual way, but it's done with pre-written computer codes that execute certain functions, like we saw when there's demand, like when somebody pays in 1 carbon credit, then they get basically this and this amount of money. And this is pre-programmed. And when people want to make changes to that, then the DAO members, typically people who hold the token and thereby are a member of it, can vote on changes in the proposal, as in what would be the yield or the rewards that people give back to the community and so on, to incentivize more people to come in and lock up their carbon credits. And these protocols, they're typically open source because it's Web3. And then people take these open source code from the internet and they say, there's this project we don't like very much, we're going to fork it. This is the question from Christian. He's like, okay, in which way does this KlimaDAO now differ from its forks? So do you know anything about the different forks, Angela, of KlimaDAO?
Well, the KlimaDAO is actually a fork, right, of Olympus DAO. So that's where it all started. So Olympus DAO has started this game theoretical aspect and also the aspect with the Treasury and protocol-owned liquidity. And KlimaDAO actually took it in alliance with Olympus DAO and forked it. So this is how KlimaDAO came into force.
Yeah. In which way were they different maybe are they like, solving a different thing than Olympus DAO?
Yeah. Yes, sure. I mean, that is what I tried to elaborate earlier. KlimaDAO has a real world asset backed in the treasury. Olympus DAO has have cryptocurrencies. The DAI, for example, is one. They have other assets and DAI, but primarily also DAI, which is a cryptocurrency asset. With KlimaDAO, it's different. They take in something from the real world, and that is also valued in the real world. So, and as you mentioned, when it gets more costly to produce carbon emissions, then the price of this asset will be driven up. And this is different from Olympus DAO. Olympus DAO it's a pure game theory topic that is, if DAI appreciates, Ohm will appreciate. Very basic saying, but the asset in the treasury is DAI, and then Ohm would, the intrinsic value would be would rely on DAI. Here with KlimaDAO, it's different because we have the base carbon ton, and it's also not a speculative, well, at least not for me. I mean, you can speculate with it, but for me, KlimaDAO is really for climate aspects, for climate interested people that say, I believe in this DAO, what it on the aim, and I would support it with money to make their goal come true.
Yeah, wow, people are asking for your email address already to maybe more to get into depth with that. So basically, maybe now let's just zoom out. There was something like Bitcoin that was introduced around 10 years ago, a bit longer than that. There was the first blockchain with its first cryptocurrency. And the source code is open. Everyone can copy that. That's what's called a fork, where they don't like what the Bitcoin does, right? So you just say, I don't really like this and this aspect of the technology. I'm going to copy the source code. I'm going to change variables that I don't like. And I want to focus on one different kind of perspective and create a product or solution for one topic of interest. So basically, Bitcoin was out there, and in 2015, Ethereum came, which is the second largest blockchain, and that had one innovation, which is like not only transferring Bitcoin back and forth, electronic money, but also enabling execution of software on top of that blockchain technology. And after that, there's more and more and more blockchains. Unit is also one of the blockchains. Michael explained, my co-founder explained in a different room how Unit works. And now we have like Olympus DAO and KlimaDAO. The cases basically where people thought, hey, we want to use the same piece of technology and the same governance mechanism to project it and solve a problem, which is climate change. And so they founded KlimaDAO, and now actually everyone can go out and found their own DAOs. DAOs is quite new. You will see almost every day a few hundred DAOs popping up. There's DAOs only for women, like women-led investments. There's DAOs only for investors, like a group of friends or non-friends from across the globe putting money together, wanting to buy something together, for example, the Constitution. And you have a lot of those initiatives enabled by internet and enabled by the technology to transfer value borderless in a trustless and decentralized way across the globe. This is what we're talking about when we speak about Web3. Yes, a DAO for women only work. Is the blockchain permissionless? Well, it's not. It's probably, typically DAOs are not necessarily creating their own blockchains, right? It's like a different way of coordinating human efforts, and they can use existing blockchains too. Sometimes they just fork, like, the smart contract mechanisms and the logics, and not necessarily build an entire blockchain. When you look at blockchain world, you have different tech stacks. You have infrastructure technology, then you have application-based layer, and so on and so forth. This is room one. Yes, exactly. Our next speaker is actually already here. So what we want to do is say thank you from the heart to Angela, who really took the efforts to look like a surgeon onto this landscape and dissect everything and explain to us what what is there to know about the token economics of a very interesting project. And the video is recorded, so for those who felt a bit overwhelmed, you can rewatch that in a few days online and then watch it at your own speed, do some research while you're watching it, looking at the landscape, and try to follow what Angela laid out very, very precise way. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I haven't picked up all the questions here. So if you like, get involved with me on LinkedIn, and I'm really happy to discuss further questions you might have. Yes, thank you for dialing in. Thanks, Yip, for hosting this here.
Thanks for joining and contributing to Work Munich Forum.